It started like any other day, the kind you don't remember until something unforgettable happens to it. The alarm blared at 6:30 a.m., but I didn't move. My body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, buried under the kind of exhaustion that sleep can't fix. The air smelled faintly of burnt toast from the apartment next door. Somewhere outside, a car horn cut through the morning silence, impatient, alive, and I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if my life was ever going to change. I dragged myself out of bed, pulled on a wrinkled shirt, and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The person staring back looked empty. The spark I used to recognize in my own eyes had been replaced by a dull gray fog. Maybe it was the endless routine: wake up, work, eat, repeat, or maybe it was something deeper, something that had been quietly eroding my hope. The coffee was cold before I even had a sip. My shoes squeaked as I stepped out into the rain, the sky hanging low and heavy like it couldn't decide whether to cry or just collapse. I was already late for work. I remember gripping the steering wheel, thinking how ordinary it all felt, how painfully, brutally ordinary. But then, the world shifted. As I turned onto the old bridge that cut across the river, I noticed something, a stillness that didn't belong. At first, I thought it was just another morning commuter, maybe someone checking their phone, waiting for a ride. But as I drew closer, the shape didn't move. It was a person, small, fragile, standing at the very edge of the bridge railing. I slowed down. My wipers swished back and forth, smearing the rain, but I could see enough. The person, a woman, maybe in her 20s, stood barefoot, toes curled over the slick edge. Her hair clung to her face, soaked through. She was trembling, but not from the cold. I don't know what made me stop. Maybe instinct. Maybe something divine. All I knew was that something inside me screamed, you can't just drive past this. So I pulled over, heart pounding so loud I could hear it over the storm. For a moment, I just sat there, gripping the wheel, frozen in that terrifying space between doing nothing and doing something. 10 seconds. That's how long it took for every part of my life to change. In those 10 seconds, I felt time stretch. Every heartbeat, every breath, every drop of rain seemed to hang in slow motion. My mind raced through 1,000 thoughts. What if I say the wrong thing? What if she falls? What if I can't reach her in time? Then a quieter voice whispered, what if you don't try at all? I stepped out of the car. The rain hit my face like needles. My shoes splashed through puddles as I walked toward her, each step heavier than the last. She didn't turn around, but I saw her shoulders shake. Hey, I called softly, though my voice barely carried over the wind. Hey, it's okay. I just want to talk. No response. The bridge creaked under my weight. I could see her hands gripping the metal rail, knuckles white, trembling. Her lips moved, but the words were swallowed by the rain. I took another step. You're not alone, I said. Please just look at me. She finally turned her head, just enough for me to see her face, pale, tear-streaked, eyes hollowed by something far deeper than sadness. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It was as if the world itself had stopped to listen. Then she whispered, almost inaudible, don't come closer. My heart ached. There was fear in her voice, but also something else, exhaustion. Like she'd been carrying a weight for far too long. I didn't move closer. I didn't argue. I just stood there, letting the rain fall between us. I know, I said softly. I know it hurts. I know it feels like no one's listening. But please just give me a minute. 1 minute. That's all I ask. She shook her head, and for a terrifying second, I saw her foot shift closer to the edge. My throat closed up. Everything in me screamed to run forward, to grab her, but something told me not to, that this moment wasn't about control. It was about connection. 10 seconds. That's all it took for the world to tilt. For a stranger's life to become bound to mine. I didn't know her name. I didn't know her story. But I knew that if I walked away, if I hesitated, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. The rain poured harder. Cars sped by behind me, splashing water across the asphalt, unaware that the most important thing in the world was happening right there on that bridge. She was crying now. Silent, shaking sobs that blended with the storm. I stood there, helpless and soaked, feeling the weight of her pain in every drop that hit the ground. And that's when it hit me how fragile life is. How it can all pivot in a heartbeat, in a decision made by two strangers under a gray, unforgiving sky. 10 seconds. That's all it takes to lose everything or to change everything. And in that moment, I silently promised, not today. Not her. The rain didn't let up. It came down in sheets, turning the bridge into a blur of gray and silver. The world around us faded into nothing. No cars, no noise, no time. Just her, standing on that ledge, and me, standing 10 feet away, terrified to breathe wrong. She was so still. That kind of stillness that feels final. The wind tugged at her wet clothes, her hair plastered to her face, and I remember thinking how heartbreakingly small she looked against the storm. My voice trembled. "Hey," I said again, a little louder this time, though my throat felt raw. "I don't know what you're going through, but I swear, it's not the end. Not like this." She turned her head slightly, her eyes meeting mine. I'll never forget that look, the mix of pain, anger, and disbelief. Like she'd already decided that no one in the world could understand her hurt, and I was just another stranger proving her right. "Please," she whispered, "just leave. I don't want anyone to see this." Her words cracked something open inside me. Because I had wanted to be invisible once too, to disappear quietly, without anyone noticing. I'd spent months pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I knew that kind of silence. It's the kind that eats you from the inside. I swallowed hard and stepped closer, slow and careful, my shoe slipping against the slick pavement. "I'm not here to stop you," I said softly. I can't leave you alone. Not like this." Her shoulders tensed. Why? That one word "why" hit me harder than anything else. Why would I care? Why would a stranger stop for someone they didn't know? I didn't have an easy answer. Maybe because someone had once done the same for me. "It's because I know what it feels like," I said. My voice cracked. To wake up and not see a reason to. To feel like every step forward is just another reminder of how far you've fallen. "I've been there." She blinked, confused. "You?" I nodded, rain dripping from my hair. "Yeah. Me. I've stood in that darkness too, the kind that convinces you no one would even notice if you were gone. But you're wrong. People would notice. The world would notice. I promise." She turned her face back toward the river. "You don't know that." "You're right," I said. "I don't know your story. But I do know this: pain lies to you. It tells you you're alone. It tells you nothing will ever get better. But that's not true. Sometimes all it takes is one person, one moment to prove the voice in your head wrong." I didn't realize I was crying until the tears mixed with the rain. My hands shook, not from the cold but from fear. Every word felt like a thread, and I was trying to hold on, afraid that if I said one wrong thing, that thread would snap. The wind howled. She swayed slightly, gripping the railing tighter. My heart dropped into my stomach. "Hey, listen to me," I said, stepping closer. "You don't have to explain anything right now. You don't owe me your story. But if you just take one step back, we can talk. You can scream, cry, curse me out, whatever you need. Just, don't give up now." For a long moment, she didn't move. Just the sound of rain. The hiss of tires on wet pavement in the distance. My heart beat in my ears. Then, in the faintest voice, she said, "It's too late." "No," I said instantly. "It's not. You're still here. You're still breathing. That means you still get to choose." She turned her head again, her eyes wide and full of tears. "You don't understand. I've lost everything." I took a shaky breath. "Then start here. Start with nothing. Start with one breath, 1 second, one heartbeat at a time." That's what I did. Her face softened just a flicker, but I saw it. A tiny fracture in the wall she'd built around herself. Hope is quiet like that, it doesn't crash in. It whispers. "I don't even know your name," she said weakly. "It doesn't matter," I replied. "Right now, you don't need my name. You just need to know someone's here, someone who isn't walking away." She stared at me, her lips trembling, eyes darting between me and the drop below. I could almost see the war happening inside her between the pain that wanted to end and the tiny, stubborn spark that still wanted to stay. Then, finally, she whispered, "I'm scared." Those two words broke me. Not because they were new, but because they were honest. "I know," I said, voice barely holding together. "Me too. But fear means there's still something left to fight for." I reached out a hand, slow, careful, the way you reach out to a wounded animal. For a terrifying moment, she didn't move. Then, inch by inch, she reached back. Our fingertips touched. Just for a second. But that second felt eternal. And that was it, the choice. The choice between despair and possibility. Between ending and beginning. She took a deep, trembling breath and stepped back from the ledge. I didn't say anything. I just caught her as her knees gave out, holding her there in the rain, both of us shaking, not because we were cold, but because we'd both just survived something we didn't have words for. In that moment, I realized something I'd never truly understood before. Sometimes, saving someone isn't about grand gestures or perfect words. It's about showing up broken, scared, human, and staying. The sirens came later, faint at first, then closer, louder, echoing through the storm like a reminder that the world was still moving. But for a long time, it felt like time itself had stopped. We sat there on the bridge, drenched and trembling, as the rain washed everything away: fear, adrenaline, tears. She was still crying, quiet, broken sobs that made her shoulders shake. I didn't say anything. I didn't try to fix it. I just stayed. Her head was buried in her hands, her hair plastered to her cheeks, her whole body shaking as though it didn't quite believe it was still alive. I remember watching her fingers, how tightly she clutched them together, as if holding herself in one piece. When she finally spoke, her voice was small, raw. "Why did you stop?" I hesitated. There were 1,000 answers. None of them enough. "Because," I said softly, "someone once stopped for me." Her eyes lifted, confused, but I didn't explain. Not yet. Some stories don't need to be told in that moment, they just need to be felt. We sat in silence again. The sky above us was a dull, endless gray, the kind that makes it hard to tell where the clouds end and the river begins. I could hear the rush of the current below, angry and alive. Every time I looked down, I thought about how close we both had come to never seeing another sunrise. Then she whispered, "I didn't think anyone would care." That sentence, simple, fragile, hit me harder than any scream could. Because I knew that feeling. The quiet lie that grows until it becomes your truth. The belief that you could disappear and the world would keep spinning, untouched. I took a slow breath. "You'd be surprised who cares," I said. "Sometimes the people you don't even know yet are already praying for you." Her lips parted like she wanted to respond, but no words came. Instead, she just nodded, and something in her face changed, not quite hope, but something gentler than despair. The flashing lights from the ambulance painted the wet pavement red and blue. Paramedics rushed over, speaking softly, moving carefully. One of them crouched beside her, offering a blanket, asking her name, if she was hurt. She looked at me first, like she was asking for permission to answer. I nodded. "It's Lily," she said quietly. Her voice cracked on her own name like she hadn't spoken it in a long time. The paramedics led her toward the ambulance. I stood there, soaked, shivering, not sure what to do. A police officer asked me a few questions: how I found her, how long she'd been there, but I barely heard them. My mind was still on her trembling hands, on the sound of her whispering. I didn't think anyone would care. Before they closed the ambulance doors, Lily turned to me. Her eyes met mine through the rain. She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. There was something in her gaze, a kind of silent promise that words couldn't carry. And then she was gone. The rain finally began to ease, fading into a mist. The street lights flickered, reflecting off the puddles. I stood there alone on that bridge for a long time, watching the tail lights disappear down the road. I felt hollow. Not empty in a bad way, more like every piece of me had been rearranged. I thought about how close she'd come. How close I'd come. And I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before: maybe that's why I was there that morning. Maybe that's why I was late, why I stopped, why I looked up at the exact moment she needed someone to see her. Maybe it wasn't coincidence. Maybe it was grace. That night, when I finally made it home, I sat in my car for almost an hour, unable to move. My hands were still shaking. My mind kept replaying those 10 seconds on a loop: her standing on the edge, the way her voice trembled, the way our hands touched. 10 seconds. That's all it took to connect two strangers whose stories were never supposed to cross. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. I kept thinking about how fragile the line is between giving up and holding on. How sometimes, the smallest act of pause, a word, a glance can tip the balance. In the morning, I drove back to the bridge. The sky was clear this time, sunlight glinting off the water. I stood in the exact same spot where she had been. The railing still had a faint handprint on it, hers, maybe. Or mine. The river below was calm now, as if pretending it hadn't almost swallowed a life the day before. Birds flew overhead. The city hummed softly in the distance. Life went on. I leaned against the railing, whispering into the wind, "Thank you." I wasn't sure who I was thanking: God, fate, chance, but I meant it. Because in saving her, I think I saved a part of myself too. The part that had stopped believing people could make a difference. The part that thought small moments didn't matter. But they do. Sometimes, it's the smallest moment that changes everything. And as the sunlight warmed my face, I realized that even though I didn't know where Lily was, I hoped she was somewhere safe, learning to breathe again. Maybe drinking coffee in a quiet kitchen. Maybe watching the rain and remembering that she made it through. I smiled, just a little. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't haunted by the darkness of the world. I was grateful for the light that still found a way in. It had been almost 8 months since that night on the bridge. 8 months since the rain, the trembling, the 10 seconds that changed everything. Life, in its strange way, had settled back into rhythm, but never the same rhythm as before. There was a different kind of quiet now, one that wasn't hollow anymore. I'd gone back to work, started running in the mornings again, called my family more often. But sometimes, when it rained, I still thought about her. Lily. The girl who almost let go, and the stranger who didn't. I never found out what happened after that night. The hospital never called. The police didn't follow up. And I didn't try to track her down. Part of me wanted to make sure she was okay, but another part of me knew that maybe she needed to move on without that moment defining her. Still, she lingered in my mind like a half-finished song. Then one morning, something changed. It was a Saturday, bright, golden, the kind of morning that feels soft enough to touch. I'd gone for a walk downtown, past the same old coffee shop I used to visit before work. It had been years since I'd stopped there, but something about that day pulled me in. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. The place smelled like fresh bread and espresso. Sunlight poured through the windows, catching the tiny flecks of dust in the air. I ordered my usual black coffee, no sugar, and found a seat by the window. And then I heard it. A voice. Familiar, though I couldn't place it at first. "Hi there. What can I get started for you?" I turned. She was standing behind the counter, hair tied back, apron on, smile soft but real. Her eyes, those same eyes I'd seen filled with rain and fear, were bright now. It was her. Lily. For a second, the world froze. My breath caught in my throat. She didn't see me at first. She was busy helping a customer, laughing at something he said. A real laugh, the kind that reaches the eyes. I just watched, motionless, trying to convince myself I wasn't dreaming. When the line cleared, she looked up and our eyes met. I saw it happen in an instant: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and then something else, something wordless and shining. She whispered, "It's you." I stood up, smiling, my heart pounding. "Hey, Lily." Her eyes filled instantly, and she covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God. I thought I didn't know if I'd ever see you again." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "I didn't think I would either." For a moment, neither of us moved. The world around us, the coffee machines hissing, people chatting, music playing softly, faded into background noise. Finally, she came around the counter. "I never got to thank you," she said, voice trembling. "You don't need to," I said. "You already did just by being here." Her smile faltered, and her eyes glistened. "You know what's crazy? I almost didn't take this job. I thought about quitting before I even started. But then I remembered what you said, that pain lies, that it tells you you're alone." She looked down at her hands, then back up. "So I decided I'd spend my days proving that lie wrong, one person at a time." I didn't trust myself to speak. She gestured to the counter, to the line of customers waiting for their morning coffee. "Every person who walks in here, I try to see them. Really see them. The way you saw me that day. You have no idea how many people come through here, smiling on the outside and breaking on the inside. Sometimes all they need is a kind word, a smile, someone who notices." I swallowed hard. "You're doing more good than you'll ever know." She laughed softly. "Maybe. But it started because of you." I shook my head. "No, Lily. It started because you chose to stay." Her eyes met mine, and for a long, quiet moment, we just stood there, two people bound not by tragedy, but by grace. She reached behind the counter, grabbed a cup, and filled it with coffee. When she handed it to me, there was a small note written on the side in marker. It said, "10 seconds can change everything." I looked up at her, and she smiled through her tears. "You told me once that 10 seconds can change your life. You were right. It did. But not just mine." I raised the cup slightly, like a toast. "Then let's make them count." We both laughed, that kind of laughter that comes when you've seen darkness and chosen light anyway. As I walked out of the cafe, sunlight spilled across the street. I glanced back once. She was at the counter, talking to a customer, smiling that same quiet smile. And in that moment, it hit me that maybe life isn't about the big, perfect moments we chase. Maybe it's about the small ones, the seconds that don't look like much but change everything anyway. 10 seconds of courage. 10 seconds of kindness. 10 seconds of hope. That's all it takes to start rewriting someone's story, including your own. And as I walked down that street, coffee in hand, Heart full, I whispered to myself. She lived. And so did I.